Hey guys, Gino here. So today I wanted to show you another lightweight, low recoil option suitable for personal or home defense. And this is definitely also a lot of fun at the range. This is the FN PS90. Now the PS90 uses a 5.7 by 28 millimeter cartridge. It fires from a closed bolt position. It's blowback operated, and it utilizes 10, 30, or 50 round magazines. Empty, it weighs about 6.3 pounds, and fully loaded with a 50 round magazine, it weighs about 7.5 pounds. And believe it or not, the barrel is 16 inches long. It's just that this Bullpup configuration is just so compact. It still has an overall length of only 26.2 inches. And for a comparison, I brought out my Colt 6920 LE, and you can see just how much more compact this little PS90 is. Even if you collapse the stock on the Colt, the PS90 is still just a much more compact weapon system. Another great thing about this little PS90 is that it's fully ambidextrous. So starting with the charging handle, which can be accessed from either side of the weapon system. Also the safety, it sits right below the trigger. So whichever trigger finger you're using, you can easily manipulate that safety. The ejection port is right here, kind of below or behind the pistol grip area, and ejects the casing straight down to the ground. The magazine, it has a magazine release on either side, left or right. You can pop one or the other, or you can kind of do both. And kind of one of the last things that helps make it fully ambidextrous is the sights. So it has built-in iron sights on both the right and left side of the weapon system for either a right or left-handed shooter. And there's also a peep sight built right into the Picatinny rail. So I'm going to start off shooting just using the iron sights that come on the PS90. I'm going to use the center peep sight that's built kind of into the rail. So the target on the left is about 10 yards. The one on the right is about 8 yards. So I want to take a minute and talk about the magazines. And right up front, I use and only recommend factory FN magazines. The aftermarket magazines for the PS90 are junk. Don't waste your money on them. Also, I've only ever used the 50 round magazines, so I can't speak from any experience with the 30 or 10 round mags. I have read that the 10 round mags can be a little difficult to load, but let's take a look at the magazine. So the body of the magazine is made of a translucent polymer, which is really cool because it allows you to see the rounds inside the magazine and kind of gauge how many are left as you're firing the weapon. It's also marked 50, 25, and 10, and that'll help you kind of gauge how many are left as you're firing. Loading the magazine is pretty straightforward. It's like most other magazines. You take your round, you push it below the feed lips and push it in. Like I said, I've only ever had the 50 round magazines. And although it is kind of a two-hand operation, they load really, really easy. It's easy to load these magazines till about the 48th round, at least for me. Around the 48th round is where it gets really, really hard just to get those last couple of rounds in there. What's also really, really neat about this magazine is as you load the rounds, there's kind of a curved ramp underneath that feeding area, and it rotates the rounds and stacks them up neatly at a 90-degree angle inside the magazine. And I have to say, whoever designed this at Fabrique Nationale was a very, very smart person, like genius level. To have a magazine that holds 50 rounds that sits parallel to the barrel, and then at a 90-degree angle it rotates and feeds them straight down into the chamber, and then ejects them straight down. That's, like I said, that's like genius level designing right there. And that's what ties this whole package together and makes this Bullpup so compact. Now there are some complaints about the way you eject the magazine. So with most firearms, you press the magazine release, the magazine drops free and clear, you reload the magazine. With the PS90, you have to actually physically strip the magazine out, drop it, and then reload a fresh magazine. And for me, as I'm firing the weapon, once it runs dry, I'll take my non-firing hand, bring it up, strip out the magazine, drop it, grab a fresh magazine, line it up, drop it back in. Now, remember, this is a closed bolt weapon. It does not have a last round bolt hold open. So once you put that magazine back in, you're going to have to recharge it, put it back on fire, and then you can fire the weapon system. But with a little bit of practice, you can actually build speed and proficiency in changing these magazines. It's not as difficult as some people make it out to be. So after firing several magazines through the peep sight, I have to say I really like it. It's really quick to acquire the target. Once you practice just a little bit and get used to where it's at, you can bring it up, you get a really solid cheek weld, and it's really accurate. But I did want to use the weapon today with some type of red dot sight. So I brought out my Trijicon MRO and I just mounted that to the top rail. And one thing to note, it sits pretty high up there on that rail. So at those closer targets, your point of impact is going to be several inches lower than your point of aim. Another thing to note is that with it sitting so high on that rail, you really don't get much of a cheek weld. The good news is there are several companies out there that make low mounts for pretty much all the red dot sights, and they fit right into the PS90 housing. What you do is you just remove the rail, you put in that low mount system, and mount your red dot to it, and that brings the red dot down significantly, where you can get a good cheek weld. It has that significantly lower height over bore, and truthfully, although this does work and you can go out and fire it, and I do fire it like this in the video, but I think the best choice would be to buy one of those low mount systems if you are going to use a red dot on the PS90. At the introduction to this video, I said that this little PS90 would be a good choice for a person looking for a lightweight, low recoil weapon, and it is. Although it looks a little strange, it's very ergonomic and really comfortable to shoot. So right here, and the weapon is clear, you take your non-firing hand and you slide your thumb right through here. This is your forward grip area. With your firing hand, you grasp the pistol grip and your trigger finger goes right through the same hole that your thumb's in. And when you pull this thing up to your shoulder and you get a good cheek weld, it fits like a glove. It's amazing to me how comfortable this weapon is. And as I was doing some research prior to making the video, I came across an article that had a comment at the bottom from someone who said that they'd had a stroke and they lost the use of their left arm and left hand, and they also said they had to sell most of their handguns because they couldn't charge them anymore one-handed. But this person said that they could charge the PS90 one-handed, and their main issue was with loading the magazines one-handed. And they weren't specific, but I assumed they meant loading the magazine into the weapon, so I gave that a try out on the range. As you can see, it's a little difficult and would definitely take a lot of practice before you could gain some proficiency and speed. So I also practiced loading the rounds into the magazines, and from a sitting position, I kind of clamped the magazine with my knees and practiced pushing in the rounds like that. I also set the magazine down on a countertop where the wall was at a 90-degree angle so the magazine couldn't push away as I was pushing the rounds in. And another really easy thing I found is if you just throw down a jacket, a shirt, some type of piece of cloth that the magazine can sit in and won't push away as you load the magazines, that's effective also. So this is just an old t-shirt. As for shooting the PS90 with one arm, the weapon, although really comfortable to shoot, it's all the weight is from the center back. It's kind of rear heavy. Out at the muzzle end, the weapon is very light. And that leads to a little bit of bounce in the felt recoil as you're firing rapidly. But once you start firing rapidly and it starts to bounce, at that point you can begin to predict and control that bounce and keep the rounds right in the critical area that would take out a bad guy. As for firing it one-handed, just so you know, I am left-handed. I do fire rifles right-handed, but that's considered my offhand or off arm. But out there on the range, I did attempt to fire this one-handed. Okay, so I know firing only 5 rounds is not a great test, so let's see if I can fire more rounds. If you predict and control that little bit of bounce in the recoil, you should be able to, even one-handed, fire as rapidly as you can pull the trigger and empty an entire 50-round magazine straight into the minute a bad guy. The last thing I want to talk about is the ammunition. I used 2 types of ammunition while making today's video. I shot about 300 rounds of this FN SS197 SR. It's a sporting cartridge. It has a 40 grain Hornady V-MAX bullet. And I also shot about 150 rounds of the American Eagle. This is also a 40 grain bullet, but it's just an FMJ. And if I had to choose between the two for self or home defense, I would definitely go with the FN because it has a little bit better ballistics. What I do not want to do is get into a big discussion about the effectiveness of the 5.7 round. There's a lot of information out there. You can do your own research and make up your own mind. One thing I do want to say is that FN makes a round called the SS198 LF, and that stands for lead-free. But that is a 27 grain bullet that they advertise as having a velocity of 2,500 feet per second. So if you have a lightweight, low recoil, easy to maneuver, and hold on target while firing rapidly, that also has a magazine capacity of 50 rounds of potentially ammunition moving at 2,500 feet per second, you have a pretty formidable weapon for self or home defense. That's a lot of fun. That is shooting for today. Let me set both these down. I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I had a lot of fun shooting this little PS90 today. And you know, I also had a little bit of fun. I actually shot my Glock 19X just a little bit, not much. Well, here's where I usually say that I had a lot of fun shooting the steel today, but I didn't shoot steel today. I only shot paper. But still, I have to say, any day that I can come out here and shoot is a really good day. I will see you guys next time.